Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Candidates event for Congressional District 20. All candidates on the ballot were invited. This event was organized by the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County. We are recording on Zoom and we have a backup moderator, Kathy Kobrick, in case something happens to my computer. This event will be recorded and posted on our website in its entirety. The video taken tonight is the property of the League and can only be used by the League or licensed media, according to FCC regulations. It may not be used by the candidates except to post a link to the complete video. We do not make this request lightly. We've had recent experience where candidates or their supporters have used portions of our video or of an audience member's own video against their opponents. This can damage our ability to organize these forums if candidates feel the video will be used against them. The League is nonpartisan, and use of the video by a campaign specifically against another candidate goes against our purpose. This behavior would discredit us, making it difficult for us to sponsor future forums. And it demonstrates a breach of trust and very disrespectful of the League. All candidates participating this evening have pledged that they will abide by our policy. My name is Kril. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County, and I will be your moderator tonight. The League of Women Voters of Saratoga County is nonpartisan, volunteer, political organization dedicated to the informed and responsible participation of citizens in government. The League never supports or opposes any political party or candidate. That has been League policy since 1920. Membership is open to anyone who is eligible to register and vote, whether male or female. Please consider joining your local League. We have received questions in advance. These have been reviewed by League members, and questions have been selected to be representative and to avoid redundancy. Questions of a personal nature are never included. We have 2 timers for this evening's event. Cards will be held up for the candidates to glance at. Green means 1 minute is left. Can you show that? Thank you. Yellow means 30 seconds are left. And red means time is up. The candidates for the Congressional District 20 in alphabetical order are Elizabeth L. Joy, running on the Republican, Conservative, and SAM, Serve American Movement lines. And Paul D. Tonko, running on the Democratic, Working Families, and Independence lines. Now it is time to hear their 2-minute opening statements. They have tossed a coin to determine the order. And I believe we are starting with Liz, correct? So it is time for Liz to give her opening statements. 2 minutes.
Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here with all of you at the Saratoga League of Women Voters. Hello to Congressman Tonko. It's nice to be with you tonight. I'm so very glad to be running for Congress here in the 20th Congressional District. I grew up here in upstate New York. I'm an upstate New Yorker. I'm a mother of 4 adult children. I'm a future grandmother in May. I'm a veteran's wife. I'm a Blue Star mother. I'm a business owner here. I'm an author and also a real estate agent. And I got into this race because I was highly concerned at the trajectory that I saw in New York State at our state level, but also at the federal level. And I saw a deconstruction and devaluing of human life. I am pro-life from the womb to the elderly. I'm very concerned at what I am seeing with the full-term abortion that is taking place. And babies being born, even on the table. I'm very concerned that we have Democrats in the House voting no on the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And I value the elderly very much, and I'm highly concerned with what we're seeing in the nursing homes. I am for a strong economy. I'm for very strong healthcare choices and strong hospitals here in our community. I want to stand up against women and children and people who are suffering from domestic violence. And I'll work very hard for us in Congress to uphold our Constitution and make sure everyone has the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And I didn't hear you.
I'm going to have to get used to this. We all have to unmute ourselves and then, okay, Paul, it's time for your opening statement.
Thank you. Well, it's a pleasure to join with the League and with Liz Joy. I wake up every day with our communities on my mind and thoughts of how I can do better to serve them. Certainly, we live in very divided times, and that we need to send someone to Congress who has a proven track record, that has been listening to all points of view and can work across the aisle to deliver for New Yorkers in terms of jobs, in terms of building back better from the pandemic, and climate change, and so much more. In this session of Congress alone, I've introduced 28 bills, 25 of which are bipartisan, 17 of which have already passed in the House. They cover a gamut of issues ranging from climate change to the opioid epidemic, to mental health, to broadband access, to scientific integrity. I challenge anyone to find another member of Congress with the success rate that I have had. This kind of work is personal to me. I think it's because over the years, I have been able to meet so many of our neighbors and friends who are part of this district and cherish those relationships. By moving forward, I think we need to address in Washington with my voice. I take your voice to Washington to speak to the progressive values that are so important to our district. We need to make certain that those who carry an agenda that satisfy the wealthy and the well-connected at the expense of the middle class, we need to elect a Congress that will make certain that they produce good jobs and sound-paying salaries. We need to make certain this Congress will be sensitive to COVID challenge and do their best to stamp it out. We need a Congress that will embrace science and respond to the threats of climate change. And we need a Congress that will continue to work to protect access to quality health care for all Americans, including those with pre-existing conditions. So that, my friends, is why I'm involved in this fight and why I humbly ask for your support and to rehire me in this election season. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Now it is time for questions. Candidates will have up to 1.5 minutes to respond to questions. You are not required to respond. You may pass if you wish. You will have 2 red cards. They're virtual red cards during the question and answer session to provide an additional 1 minute to add to your response or to respond to something another candidate has said. The timer and I will keep track of the number of red cards used. Questions will be directed to candidates in rotation so that everyone gets a chance to respond first. So our first, Liz will get a chance to respond to the first question. What do you view as your main objectives while serving in the House of Representatives?
Well, thank you very much for that question. And I believe that the main objective in serving in the House of Representatives is upholding the Constitution. It's the backstop and the foundation for which our country is founded upon. And so that will be my very first and foremost. And the second is ensuring the safety and security of our nation. And so that is what I will work very hard for. I see a lot of things that are happening in Congress with these omnibus bills that are taking away a lot of our liberties that I don't support, that are socialist trends that I do not support. So I will be working very hard to ensure that our Constitution is upheld for every American of every color, every race, and every gender.
Thank you. Okay. Paul, the question was, what do you view as your main objectives while serving in the House of Representatives?
Sure, thank you, Ann. Well, we definitely have a downturn in the economy. In order to reignite our economy, we need to get to the other side of the COVID pandemic. And so my priority is to approach in a holistic fashion the efforts to get through that very difficult challenge. We have introduced the HEROES Act that was passed 5 months ago. It's a comprehensive bill that will go toward opening up our economy by getting us to the other side of the COVID experience. It invests in testing, in tracing, in treatment. It invests in our business community to shore up our businesses. It invests in our hospitals because they had a precipitous drop in revenues. It invests in our families by shoring them up with stimulus checks that are given them. There's no denying that our economy, which was holding on by a thread, was underpinned by these efforts that we have made in a bipartisan, bicameral way. And now, unfortunately, the HEROES Act still remains unresolved. I'm hoping that we can get that done so that we can really respond to what is a tremendous challenge, perhaps one of the biggest public health challenges we have had in a century. We also need to make certain that as we go forward, we make it very safe to reopen our schools, which HEROES does. It provides for technology retrofit so that systems, the air circulation systems, the personal protective equipment, the technology that's necessary will be made available by HEROES. So it invests in community, invests in families, it invests in business, it invests in the healthcare systems, and brings us forward through getting to the other side of COVID-19.
Thank you, Paul.
I'd like a red card on that.
Okay, red card for Liz. Joy, can you start the timer again? Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. In regard to the HEROES Act, I have a response to that. That HEROES Act is a $3 trillion bill. It's the largest bill in history. And what Paul Tonko is not being forthright about to the viewers tonight is that in the back half of that HEROES Act, almost 2,000 pages long, is national bail reform that releases prisoners, violent criminals, out of jail at 50 years old, whether or not they have been violent. They will be releasing them onto the streets. I don't support that. It's dangerous to us. It's exactly what's already happened here in New York State. And it also is a mail-in voting system. It's a federal takeover of all of our elections, no ID required. That's what's in the HEROES Act. It's fundamentally going to deconstruct our Constitution and what our country is built on. And we should not be releasing violent criminals out onto the street when the capital region already has a humongous spike in crime. Albany has more shootings, Schenectady, Troy, and Amsterdam, and gangs are on the rise.
Thank you, Liz. All right. So if we don't have another red card, we'll go on to question number 2. We are covering a lot of different subjects. The subject of this question is uniting the country. And the first answer will be Paul. The nation is more divided than ever, with both major political parties firmly entrenched in partisan positions to the detriment of the American people. If elected, what will you do to break from this pattern of gridlock and work in good faith with both parties to get things done?
Well, I do it currently, Ann. What I do is, as a member of Energy and Commerce, I reach out to Republicans on my committee, and we have one-on-one get-togethers so that we can talk about our vision for work we want to get done in the House. We talk about what motivated us to be involved in politics. It's about relationship building. And, you know, some things you simply can't legislate. So I've tried to do my personal thing to kind of bring things together, bridge that gap. It's been very productive because, as I indicated, I have 25 bills that are bipartisan of the 28 that I've entered into the House. And also, we've had a track record of passing 17 of those. That happens because you build good relationships. I have a great relationship with Representative Shimkus of Illinois on our subcommittee of Environment and Climate Change. Finally, to the point that Liz made about bail reform, she's misrepresenting that. It's a short-term statement in the bill as long as the COVID virus situation lasts. So it's very term limited. It goes towards nonviolent offenders, and it makes certain that it was done in public policy terms for health purposes, so that clustering in jails will not contaminate others in jail. So as we've worked to provide safety in our schools, in our businesses, in our communities, in our gathering places, we do so in our incarceration centers. And that was policy driven by public health. So it's not really represented as she's expressed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Liz? Would you
The
like
question was on you.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, on unity. Can you repeat the question?
Yes, uniting the country. The nation is more divided than ever, with both major political parties firmly entrenched in partisan positions to the detriment of the American people. If elected, what will you do to break from this pattern of gridlock and work in good faith with both parties to get things done?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I know exactly how to answer that, especially being somebody that hasn't been a career politician. I can tell you that I have had to raise a family. I've had to work in the schools. I've had to be a real estate agent, a business owner, and we've served in the military. And I can tell you that I know how to get along with a lot of people on a lot of different levels. And in going to Washington, I would be able to do the same thing. It's finding the things that are in common, the things that you have in common with one another, and being able to work to the best of your ability to bring the best to your district. And I would be able to do that. I disagree with the congressman when he says that he's been trying to be a uniter, because from day one, when our president came into office, he already was standing for impeachment and was helping to be a roadblock to every single thing that the president tried to push through. And he was one of the first people on October 31st of last year to bring down the impeachment gavel when he was opening as the speaker tempore in the House. So I find it very difficult to believe what he says. He hasn't been doing that. He's been an obstructionist. And that's why we need somebody that has a clear voice and a clear vision, who's actually been here on the ground, who's not dependent on a federal salary. It's not my bread and butter. So I can go and work with people and bring the best into our economy, funnel great legislation to our business owners, funnel good legislation into our schools and to the working people, because that's what we are, and that's what my husband and I are.
And I think you need to unmute.
Oh,
There you go. We're getting there.
sorry. Thank you, Joy. The next question is concerning healthcare, and I will go first to Liz. The pandemic is straining our healthcare system, and many citizens have lost their employment-based health insurance. Additionally, there is a chance that the Affordable Care Act may be eliminated. What can be done to ensure that citizens have access to quality, affordable health care?
That's a good question. And as you may well know, my entire family is in the healthcare industry. My husband is a provider here in the Capital Region at Ellis Medicine. He's a heart specialist. And our daughter is an EMT, a Buffalo EMT. And one of the things that we have seen is our providers have been outstanding during this pandemic. They have seen everybody and they've taken care of everybody. But one of the biggest things that we can do is open up our hospitals to full capacity, which Governor Cuomo has not allowed to happen. So I can tell you that as a provider's wife, I saw that procedures were put off for too long, over 8 weeks. We had malignancies that have grown. We've seen depression grow, suicides grow. People were put back 8 weeks on their heart defibrillators. And these are things that we cannot afford to do. People's knee replacements, people's hip replacements. We need to get our hospitals open. We need to get people in there. We need to stop the curve of the depression, the opioid, and we need to allow our hospitals to prosper, allow people to purchase their private health insurance plans. And people that need government plans, we need to ensure that they get that, because every person does deserve good quality health care. And I'm excited to talk about the healthcare issues because my opponent supports Medicare for All, which is a socialist takeover and will plummet our 5 hospitals here in the Capital Region. And it will cause them to go under because we can't afford to pay for it.
Okay. I'm playing with this mute and unmute. I can't remember which is which. Okay, thank you, Liz. And I sort of want to caution you on calling people names. Okay.
What name did I call the congressman?
A socialist.
That's not a name, that's a fact.
I think it's opinion. Okay.
No, it's a fact.
The next question will go to.
No, do I answer the healthcare question or no?
What I mean is Paul will answer this question next.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Well, before I do, let me just again correct a mischaracterization. My actions on impeachment, my decisions were not based out of any dislike of our president. They were based out of love for our country and our Constitution, and I'll stand by that. On the issue of testing and tracing and treatment, which are very important to stamping out this virus, to crushing the virus, we have the dollars allocated. We've been imploring the president to establish a strategic plan, which is essential to get us through this crisis. And also with an effort before the Supreme Court, which will happen early in November, I've been asked to vote 60 times more on repealing the Affordable Care Act, which I always voted against. I've been now watching two efforts in the Supreme Court that went down in their efforts to repeal. We are looking at them stacking the court perhaps to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which will then take 20 to 30 million people, put them in the ranks of the uninsured, take away pre-existing condition protection, deny young people to stay on their parents' policy, and certainly perhaps have women paying more for their insurance coverage. These are detrimental, and there's no replacement plan. If I were to ask Liz what she thought of the president's replacement plan, she couldn't answer because there's no such bill. So very dreadful, very callous, very insensitive, and not really clued in to what this nation needs right now. Many people, as you indicated in the question, have lost their private sector coverage with the loss of a job. We need there to be there for testing, tracing, and treatment, and overall insurance. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. All right. The next question, we're going to talk about voting now. Question number 4 will go first to Paul. What needs to be done to protect every citizen's right to vote, and how can we make it easier for them to do so?
Well, obviously, I think that there's many opportunities for us to, at state levels, to open up the system so that there's easier access to voting stretched over a long period of time. Many states go to totally voting by mail, early voting. New York, as you know, can begin on the 24th. But I also think that with the concern for the COVID spread, we've encouraged people to stay at home where they can, or they've been quarantined to stay at home. They should have the flexibility and faith and trust in the system to be able to vote from home, vote by mail. And when the head of the postal system, Postmaster DeJoy, messed with the postal system, they took away curbside mailboxes. They didn't fill vacancies. They denied overtime payment, took technology away that sorted the mail to expedite the process. I'm concerned that we need to roll that back. I'm on a bill to roll it back to January 1st, 2020 standards. And we also provide for $15 billion in our HEROES Act to shore up the postal system because of the onslaught that's anticipated with voting through the mail. But here, there should be every opportunity to vote in person, vote by mail, vote by absentee. Any of those are justified. We just encourage people to vote early because I'm concerned about manipulation in the process this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Liz, what needs to be done to protect every citizen's right to vote, and how can we make it easier for them to do so?
Well, we have those systems already in place. So obviously, if you're able to vote in person, I encourage that. That's the best way for someone's voice to be heard and be counted. If somebody can't do that, we already have absentee voting in place. It's been a proven system for many, many years, and people have been doing it for a long time. There's no reason for us to have separate from that mail-in voting, which the congressman is encouraging. We've already seen all over the country where mail-in ballots have been lost, not counted. Just look at the case that we had outside of New York City, where 84,000 to 90,000 people's voices and votes were not counted and were not heard. It's an utter disaster out there because of the mail-in voting. With mail-in voting, there's absolutely no ID required, and I oppose that. We are American citizens. If you are here in this country and you are exercising your right to vote, going to the polls in person, is great, but if you can't do that, absentee voting is the best way to be able to do that. And it doesn't take any more effort than a mail-in vote. And the congressman in the HEROES Act that he keeps talking about, it's a federal takeover of our elections. No ID required for anybody to be able to mail in a ballot. Someone could bring somebody else's vote in and say, this is their vote, and it would be counted. He knows that. He knows what he's doing, and I oppose it. And we need to make sure that our elections are fair and balanced and that every voice is heard.
Thank you, Joy. I think you know that the League of Women Voters is very involved in the voting process and in getting rules passed that make it possible for people to have access to voting. And I think you know that the absentee ballots that are being sent in, the mail-in ballots that you call them, do require a signature. And that's nothing more than or less than is required for in-person voting.
And the mail-in ballots have been lost all over the country.
Well,
That's a fact.
the system is under a lot of stress right now. And
But so the integrity of the election is at risk.
You're not debating with me.
No, I'm not. I'm giving facts.
Mhm. Okay, the next question is about the economy. And this question goes first to Liz. As parents go back to work, they are finding that childcare is either not readily available or for many unaffordable. The inability to find affordable, high quality care not only affects parents' ability to work, but also negatively impacts their employer when their employees are either absent from work or distracted on their job. If elected, what actions would you take to address the crisis in childcare?
Well, as a mother, I can relate to that as a mother of 4. And I think that it's very important that mothers and fathers have access to good quality care for their children. One of the best ways to be able to do that is to open up our economy so that people are getting back to work, so that people are bringing in the funds that they need and bringing money that they need in. When you spur the economy and you have the economy rebounding again and back up, it was the strongest economy that we had ever had, even 10 months ago. We can get back there. I support the administration's actions that they have taken for child care. I support those. I think that we need to be able to incorporate more of those into our school systems. I think we need to be able to incorporate that through the Good Head Start programs. I support those things. Our children need that. Our parents need that. And I think that it's very important. So I'm a huge advocate for families having good quality care for their children and for those children to be taken care of well.
Thank you, Liz. Do you want me to repeat the question, Paul?
No, I'm set. Let me begin by just making a statement by voting by mail. If the president of our country can vote by mail, I want to make sure my constituents have that same opportunity. On the child care issue, I agree with Liz. I think it's critical for our working families to have that reinforcement. In our HEROES bill, I seem to dwell on that, but it's a comprehensive bill. We put in money for daycare, childcare, and for Head Start. We make certain there are tax credits for working families scaled to those most in need. So that, think of it, if schools, which we want to open safely, have an incidence of contamination by the virus, those schools may be closed and they're going to have to do virtual learning. What are working families going to do? Will they lose their job if they don't show up for that job? Our children will be at risk. So in its comprehensive format, in the context of comprehensive quality, we include childcare, which is so important, and the tax credits are important too. In the Senate's self-labeled skinny bill, they do nothing for that. And so the negotiations have been protracted. It's been 5 months, and we didn't really hear much until just days ago. And now people are trying to negotiate through all of those concepts so that, again, working families, those most struggling in our society, we have to recall that neighborhoods of color, people of color have been impacted far more with the COVID spread than the rest of the population. So it's important for us to be reflective of those families truly in need. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the environment. And this question will go first to Paul. Severe weather and natural disasters seem to be the new norm. From wildfires in the West, hurricanes along our coast, and epic storms that cause power outages and flooding, our nation is experiencing widespread misery and devastation, often at taxpayer expense. How do you propose to address these problems?
Well, certainly we need to make certain that FEMA is well funded for those natural acts of nature that need to be responded to. But beyond that, in context, I would say climate change needs to be addressed. I am proud of the fact that I can chair the Environment and Climate Change Subcommittee that reports to the House Standing Committee on Energy and Commerce. It has been my responsibility to put a response together. Just this year, we introduced a framework with 9 principles, including environmental justice and shoring up all sectors of the economy to decarbonize. That will enable us to go forward without this great expectation of more severe weather as we go forward. So it's short-term strategy, shoring up FEMA, but certainly in the medium and long term, it's making certain that there is a sound plan, a strategic plan, one that speaks to an economy-wide effort to decarbonize, one that introduces innovation, that introduces renewables, has grid modernization, has research that will get us to innovative concepts and to relieve the pressure on the grid by doing microgrids and various other efforts that will take us into a new generation of energy and environment thinking. That in contrast with an administration that we battle on climate change that has rolled back federal standards on clean air, rolled back federal standards on clean water, rolled back CAFE standards on transportation, on vehicles. This is an administration that has caused environmental damage after Republican and Democratic administrations worked so hard to improve the environment. Thank you.
Okay, Liz?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that question on climate change. I believe that taking care of your climate begins here at home. And one of the things that I would address that the congressman has not addressed and people have repeatedly asked him for help on is the Dunn landfill. So as a mother of 4, the Dunn landfill has been put up next to a school right over in Rensselaer. And there has been proven upper respiratory infections, proven headaches, proven nausea. The people are actually getting sick over there. There have been repeated demonstrations, repeated actions that the people that live there have been trying to take to get that shut down. They've been videotaping dust storms that have been going into the school over there. That is one of the first things that I would immediately seek to get shut down for those residents over there so they could have alleviation in their health and alleviation in their school system so that those students are able to concentrate. I believe it begins at home. We already have the lowest carbon footprint right now in the United States. We're actually leading the way on clean air and clean ocean. And so I'm a huge proponent of that. I support that very much. But one of the things that I oppose is the $93 trillion Green New Deal, which the congressman fully endorses. And that's wiping out all fossil fuels. And that would also be having to revamp all of our houses, all of our buildings, and taking away all of the 18-wheelers off the roads that currently bring our products. So we already have a low carbon footprint and we're working. We've exceeded expectations here in the United States already by 10 years. We're 10 years ahead. We already have clean air, the cleanest oceans we've ever had. And but I would encourage and let people know that one of the first things I'll be working on is that Dunn landfill to be able to bring you relief.
Thank you, Joy. Okay, we're going to move on to social policy. And this question will go first to Joy. Police use of excessive force and the unequal enforcement of the law are concerns of many citizens, not just Black and brown people. What reforms do you support to make everyone safer and the system more just?
Well, thank you for that question. Just so you know, my name is Liz. My last name is Joy. That's okay, but I answer. Anyway, I wanted to, I support our law enforcement. I'm a huge supporter of our law enforcement, men and women in blue and across the country. I do believe that reform needs to happen. Actually, our law enforcement believes that reform needs to happen, but I believe it's through funding them, not defunding them. I believe it's funding them for all the education that they need and that they are requesting and want. I believe that it's funding them so that each law enforcement officer can have the cameras that the departments need to have for them. And I believe it's funding them so that we can upgrade to having 2 officers in a vehicle as opposed to just 1. That protects the community, and it also protects our law enforcement officers. I don't believe in vilifying an entire profession because of the acts of a few. While I am very, everybody saw the video of George Floyd. Everybody agrees that that was murder. There's not one mom in the nation that didn't cry when George Floyd cried out for his mother that he couldn't breathe, including myself. It was an awful thing to watch. It should have never happened. That being said, I will not condemn an entire profession because of the acts of a few. We don't do that to physicians. We certainly don't do that to teachers that have molested their students, and we don't do that to parents who have abused their children. So we can work together to protect our brown and Black communities as we should, and strive for racial equality, and also protect and stand up for our law enforcement officers.
Thank you, Joy. Liz. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
And can I ask you to repeat the question, please?
All right. So we're on social policy. Police use of excessive force and the unequal enforcement of the law are concerns of many citizens, not just Black and brown people. What reforms do you support to make everyone safer and the system more just?
Well, I support the Justice in Policing Act, which would move to ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants that would limit military equipment on our streets, require body cameras, build integrity and trust into the system, improve education programs for our police officers, our peace officers, and improve transparency, and list lynching as a federal crime. So I think there's a lot of good in there that can bring about reforms. When I hear people sadly bring this into an us and them scenario, it is strongly suggesting I'm for status. There's a suggesting they're for status quo. Status quo will get us nowhere. We know that these crimes have been applied disproportionately in racial and religious sort of incidents. We need to improve that. It's why I think many police departments across the country are reforming their policies, because we need to know, is it poor policy or is it a lack of policy implementation? We have a long way to go there. And also, I think, a lot of claims were made in commercials and in statements that I want and that I stand for defunding the police. Nothing could be farther from the truth. If I were to ask my opponent to produce evidence, she couldn't. So I will not ask her to do that. It would be futile to try and produce that evidence. I stand for funding the police. The president has defunded the police to the tune of 58% on the COPS program, which I believe should be part of our response here. More community policing. And I voted to restore the police cut that he made in the budget several times over. I stand for that COPS program. And I think it's the way to get things done. Red card, please.
Paul, would you like to continue your remarks?
No, I just like a red card. I get one more minute, right?
That's right.
Okay. Now, I find it interesting that my opponent has claimed I'm for defunding the police, when in fact she could, and she criticizes the HEROES Act. In the HEROES Act is local funding for municipal groups that have had a precipitous drop in revenues. Those dollars that we want to share from the federal government with local government would go in some format to police protection, that would go to fund police, essential officers out there. I find it ironic that she would mischaracterize a portion of the HEROES Act, as we talked about earlier tonight with the public health policy in our incarceration centers, as a reason to have voted no, when in fact we could gain dollars for our police officers in the funding that comes with the HEROES Act. And also in that HEROES Act is a $100 million annual effort that I got carved into the bill that would go towards enhancing the Medicare wage index factor for the 5 hospitals, or for the 5 counties worth of hospitals in the 20th Congressional District. So she's saying no to that help to the hospitals, no to our police, by finding a faulty reason to vote against the HEROES bill.
Thank you, Paul. And I believe Liz wants to use a red card now.
Well, I do. And not only that, the congressman went over his time on both of those, and that didn't include the red card. So I'm going to do the same. What I would like to say is that Congressman Tonko is never been for the police. It's a proven track record that he has. He's always come out against them. In 2018, he voted no on the Protect and Serve Act. That said that if any law enforcement officer during interstate commerce was assaulted or raped, that was an automatic $10,000 fine, and they would go to federal prison. Paul Tonko was only one of 25 House members that voted no on that bill, and everybody else voted yes. Thankfully, it did pass even without his vote. And then also on the HEROES Act, I would like to say, Paul Tonko is voting to release criminals out onto our streets like it's nothing. That HEROES Act includes a federal national prison release of anyone over the age of 50, even if they're a violent felon. In New York City alone, Rikers Island turned out 6,000 Rikers Island inmates just since COVID-19. So he is not being forthright with exactly what is in this bill. It's $3 trillion. It's not just for funding our towns and our municipalities. There is very detrimental things to our nation in this bill, including massive criminal release.
Liz, I allow people to finish their sentences, but not to go on and on, okay? Let's not.
The congressman went on, and he went over after the stop was up. I should have the same.
I think I'm giving you the same treatment. Okay, the next question will go first to Paul, and we're talking about economy now. Both of you support robust social programs. In a challenged economy, how can Congress work to protect funding and seek new revenue streams?
Well, obviously, I think the reinforcement that we can do by investing in the economy right now is important. Economists on both sides of the aisle and the chairman, for that matter, of the Federal Reserve, appointed by the president, has challenged this administration and the Republicans in Congress to invest boldly in our economy. He said the rates will never be better, and it's not a question of whether we want to do this or not, but the economy is in very fragile shape. So we need to invest in our economy. I say there's an opportunity for us now to re-engineer the efforts for many of those growing sectors of our economy. Green power, clean energy was double the rate pre-COVID of job creation than the overall universe. So we should look at building back a strong, clean energy economy, making certain that we invest here in manufacturing. One thing we learned, Anne, in the COVID experience to date is that supply chain concerns develop. We had to rely on nations, sometimes not our allies, to produce the resources we require. This should challenge us to build an economy that invests in modern manufacturing, in innovative concepts that will get us the resources we need to grow jobs in those sectors that were most robust before COVID hit us. We also need to have workforce training programs. So as we develop these job creations in the economy, we will be able to grow the economy.
Thank you, Paul. Joy, the question is on economy.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I like that name.
Thank you.
It's Liz.
Thank you.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, it's on growing the economy. Thank you very much. Well, the truth is that we had the best economy that our nation has ever seen 10 months ago before the COVID-19 actually hit. We had the highest record employment rate for our Black Americans, for our Brown Americans, for our Asian Americans, for our Hispanic Americans, and for women. It was an outstanding economy, and I believe that we can get back there again. One of the ways that we need to do that is simply open the economy back up. We need to open it to capacity again so that we can all go back to work in a safe way, wearing masks, doing social distancing, but we need to open up our economy again. Our hospitality industry has been decimated. The hospitality industry just in New York City alone and here in our capital region has been decimated. The hardest number of months that they have ever seen. We need to open up our gyms, which are such an important part of mental health. We need to get that get those back up and running. And I believe we need to work on making sure that we bring all of our robotic jobs, our manufacturing jobs back from China. We need to get our robotics back here and our pharmaceuticals back here, and so that we can create those jobs here in America and get those things out to the American people. It's easy to do. It's not hard. I believe that we can do it. And that will cause our economy to thrive again, people's 401ks to be going back up, women, single moms to be able to be thriving again, and our Black and Brown, Asian, and Hispanic Americans as well.
Thank you, Liz. The next question is on social policy, and it will go first to Liz. While protecting freedom of the press, how would you foster more truth and more comprehensive reporting?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's actually a moral dilemma. We in our First Amendment, we have freedom of the press. People can have the ability to print what they want. We're seeing a lot of our social media. We're seeing on Twitter, we're seeing on Facebook, where they are actively blocking conservative accounts. They're actively blocking Republican accounts. They're actually not dealing with a lot that's been going on with Joe Biden and his son. They're not printing those things. I don't think that that's okay. So we need to, I believe one of the best ways that we can do that is by bringing in the competition. People are very smart. Americans are smart, and they're going to choose what media they want to watch. They're going to be able to turn to outlets that are reporting facts and reporting substance and being very fair. Americans have the ability to do that. We're smart, and I don't think it should be, I don't think that the press should be regulated by our government.
Okay, thank you, Liz. And Paul?
Thank you, Ann. Well, before I answer that question, let me just go back to the economy. It depends on who you ask pre-COVID-19 as to whether or not the economy was strong. Remember, there were many who responded in a survey that said they didn't have as much as $500 in case of an emergency. That's a weak economy. So, you know, we have improvements to make. We need to make certain that we create a just, robust, competitive, sustainable economy as we go forward. In regard to truth in reporting and the work on our social media, there have been many hearings with the growing use of social media that is looking at a way to respond in constitutional format, correctness, to make certain that there is truth involved, that there is some sort of responsibility borne by those who are allowing for these efforts to be made. Remember, there was a lot of concern when there was investigations that were proven by our investigation groups in this country that Russia did intervene in our election process in 2016. They were harming a domestic political rival through the invited foreign interference. That had many people concerned, and we want to make certain that those efforts through social media are not allowed to continue. There's concern that will happen again in 2020. And again, that order of defying the Constitution in a sense and going forward with all sorts of misrepresentation and mistruths are concerned enough to hold the hearings that are being held in both houses of Congress.
All right. Thank you, Paul. We're going to go back to the economy again with another question. This question goes first to Paul. Do you plan to sponsor and/or support additional stimulus benefits for COVID relief?
Absolutely. I think that, again, there is such a concern about rising numbers again with COVID. We have many states reporting increased numbers of cases. We are 4% of the world's population. We've had 20% of the cases and 20% of the deaths. So we need to do better. We've defied science here, so we need to make certain that we're ready to go and shore up the economy. A stimulus check in this package, I think, is very important, along with stabilizing our hospitals that had a precipitous drop in their revenues through no fault of their own, and our local governments that need the dollars. They did not lose those dollars through misappropriation or mismanagement. It came about through no fault of their own, with dynamics that drove down the numbers. With hospitals, we told people to avoid hospitals, avoid the emergency room, delay surgery, avoid screenings that you might have done because of concern for contamination. So these numbers are rising again. There's concern that it could come back with a greater strength as we go towards the winter months. So we need to shore up this economy. We need to provide the relief for families. Obviously, a lot of the elements of CARES that was done earlier in bipartisan, bicameral ways to get relief to the families and the businesses out there helped. We need to shore up our restaurants. I had a hearing with restaurants. They suffered greatly. In the beginnings here in April, they were the largest rationale for loss of jobs because they lost their clientele. We need to shore them up also. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Liz, do you?
Can you repeat the question for me, please?
Sure. On the economy, do you plan to sponsor and or support additional stimulus benefits for COVID relief?
I'm not opposed at all to more relief. I stand that if people do need to have some relief, if our municipalities need to have some relief, I am not opposed to that at all. What I am opposed to is what's in the HEROES Act because it's not earmarked specifically for who gets what. For example, New York State governor has requested $500 billion in that HEROES Act, and it would be a blank check to Governor Cuomo to use as he would like. I believe that we need to make sure that our capital region gets the money and the funding for those municipalities, the schools, the fire departments, the police departments, so that people don't have to be laid off that they actually need. So maybe it's the Burnt Hills School District's going to get this amount, the Scotia Glenville Fire Department's going to get this amount, that it's going to be Albany Medical Center is going to get this amount. It has to be earmarked. As the HEROES bill is written right now, nothing is earmarked, and I don't think that's responsible. I don't think it's fair to the taxpayers. I do support relief, but I support it in a much smaller, condensed way where the citizens of New York 20 are going to see what they need, get what they need but also at the same time allow our economy and our businesses to be able to open to full capacity as well as our hospitals.
And red card, please.
Okay, you have one more red card. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Look, when you reject science and you mock the virus, you mock wearing masks, you mock social distancing, as the leadership of the country has done. My opponent rejected masks. I think even in your commercial, no one is wearing a mask, and young children are subjected to potential contamination. We need to do better than that. What I will speak to in the negotiations right now, it was 5 months ago that we passed HEROES. It's just weeks ago when they came to the table, and now they're doing negotiations in earnest. But we're not just negotiating programs or allocation, we're negotiating words, and words matter. A difference between shall and may. They want a slush fund. You talk about earmarks, I would tell my opponent, the administration wanted a slush fund, $10 billion to go to agricultural programs. We asked, where's the language? Well, we just want discretion by the secretary, and they do this in many departments. So you want earmarks? You want delineation? Absolutely. When we're passing the bill, we wordsmith. So we're negotiating not just dollars and programs, we're negotiating words, and words matter. It took forever to get them from may to shall for a strategic plan.
You also negotiated massive prison release and criminals out onto the streets.
I'm sorry. If you want to say something during your next question time, it'll be okay, but the red cards are all used now. Social policy is our next question, and we'll go first to Liz. Caregivers for both children and the elderly are among the lowest paid workers in our economy, but we have seen how dependent our society is on caregivers. What should our society do to treat them fairly?
Our caregivers, and you're speaking to as our caregivers as medical, or I couldn't hear you very well. I'm so sorry, I couldn't hear you.
All right. Caregivers for both children and the elderly are among the lowest paid workers in our economy, but we have seen how dependent we are upon them. What should our society do to treat caregivers of both of those ages, to treat them fairly?
Well, I think it's wonderful that we have the caregivers that we do, taking care of our young children and our elderly. I'm a huge advocate for every life, and especially for the young and the elderly. Everything in between are vulnerable citizens, and I think that they should be paid fairly. And that's something that we need to be able to do by driving competition. We need to be able to be opening up our economy and showing them that appreciation. So I don't think that it's a government's role to be handing out funds to all of our caregivers, but certainly when somebody goes into the caregiving industry, taking, whether they're a daycare provider or going into our elderly homes, they're wonderful, very special people, and they deserve to get paid very strongly, and I support that.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Paul?
Thank you, Ann. I developed the support for responding to caregivers at the early end of life in an earlier question that I responded to. So let me take the senior vintage. And I can relate to this because I have a 99-and-a-half-year-old mom who's in a nursing home setting, love her dearly. And it's been difficult because any chance I had coming back from Washington, I went to make visits with her. My sister, my family has been very much careful in responding to her needs, and very, very loving. But think of it, Alzheimer's as a healthcare concern can bankrupt this country if we don't come up with some alternative settings. I support research. I've done a number of the Alzheimer's Association bills. I've been the major carrier. But one of them is to make certain that there's credits, tax credits for those who provide respite, that provide care at home. And think of it, with a dementia situation, it's loving to have four familiar walls surrounding the individual. So wherever we can bring that quality of life to play, we should do it. And it saves government because they avoid the institutional costs of care for these loved ones. But I think it can be used in social settings that improve the quality of life of our seniors, that can respond to saving dollars for government, and it would be a wise investment to go forward with credits. I think that it's the kind thing to do, the compassionate thing to do, and from the government perspective, the smart thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We have two more questions before our final closing statements. So the next one goes first to Paul, and we're going back to the economy. What should the federal government do to create jobs and improve the economy?
Well, we're entering into an innovation economy that is global in nature. And, we saw what happened when we invested in research via the space program in the 60s. And that unleashed untold amounts of technology in every sector of the economy and made us a world leader, a kingpin in the international economy. We need to do the same thing here. We need to invest in American intellect through research and come up with the new prototypes that will lead to the manufacturing of new designs. That will lead us to, I think, a stronger manufacturing base. We need to make certain that we're developing, again, thoughtfulness when it comes to the supply shortages that we learned were so painful in the COVID experience. We need to invest in workforce. Now, the WIA program is one that really is a powerful tool that enables people in an innovation economy to have precision skills. This economy is about precision. And so you have to have very particular training to be able to be working in these areas. In this Capital District region, I'm proud to say, we're oftentimes cited as one of the 5 leading regions of the country for green collar, clean energy, high-tech job growth. We'd be foolish not to invest in the research and the job training programs so that we have the human infrastructure that these businesses require as we go forward. So it's about these programs that will, and there's also a STEM program that takes the high school student 4 years into a 2-year college experience at a community college, puts them in an apprenticeship program. That would be valuable. As President Obama used to say, a community college degree is very helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. What should the federal government do to create jobs and improve the economy? Liz?
Well, thank you very much. And just before I quickly answered that, in regard to the nursing home, when the congressman was speaking about compassionate care, I question why the congressman has been silent on all the nursing home deaths here in New York State, and why he didn't join that bipartisan investigation that's going on and been called for by the House of Representatives to investigate why there's been so many deaths in our nursing homes. That's something that's a great concern to me. So many people have not been able to see their loved ones. So many loved ones have passed away. We've heard the stories. We know that it's happened. We know that it's true. So I think that that's something that when you talk about compassionate care, especially for the elderly, but you have someone that is supposed to be representing them. We have 720,000 people living here in the district, and you don't join in and you're silent completely on all of these nursing home deaths. I think that that's of concern. And I don't think that that's actually creating any unity or comfort to the people that live here. In regard to the economy, I think that we need to make sure that we get our manufacturing up and running. I support bringing our pharmaceuticals back from China and bringing them back here to the United States. Of course, our manufacturing. Of course, I support all of our trades, bringing them back here. One of the things that I would sponsor that the congressman wouldn't sign off on is the Drive Safe Act, allowing students in high school graduating to be able to get their CDL licenses, because we currently have a shortage in our nation. It would create a supply that we need in our nation. And we need that here to bring jobs and good benefits to the students that don't want to take college debt on.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more question on immigration. And this goes first to Paul. No? No, to Liz, right. Thank you. Okay, what changes would you support in our immigration laws?
Well, in our immigration laws, let me just first say that I am definitely not for splitting up any family. So I support children staying with their parents and parents staying with their children. I'm extremely family oriented. Families need to stay together, and that's something that I would make sure happens in Congress. I believe in allowing people that want to come into our country to be here legally. I do think that they need to be documented. I personally would not send anybody back if they, if, for example, I would not separate and make people go back if they've been here for a long time. What I would suggest is if they're already here and they're working here and they're doing well, that we put them on a fast track to citizenship if that's what they want. And then from here on out, we work on making sure that everyone's coming in lawfully, documented. I think that that's important. Our biggest port of entry for drugs, sex trafficking, and gangs is well known to be our southern border. So I am for a safe, secure border. I support that very much. People may know that my nephew died from some of those drugs that came in that way, fentanyl and heroin overdose. It was a very tragic thing, and too many of our citizens and children are dying because of these drugs that are coming through that border. So I very much support safety, security, legal immigration, and I also support allowing people to stay here that have been here, that have been working, and getting them on a fast track to citizenship.
Okay, thank you, Liz. So what changes would you support in our immigration laws, Paul?
Yes, thank you. I think that number one, the situation of which my opponent speaks is not really penetrated through the border trafficking, but through our ports. That's been documented to be the number one way that they gain access to the nation. In fact, historically, they're at some of the lowest points now of people crossing the border. So I think we need to invest our funds in a wiser way. I'm very, very much critical of the president and how he responded to the Dreamers Act. We have individuals who are working or matriculating for degrees, serving in the military, who have been denied a great opportunity for a sound pathway to citizenship. We need to have sound immigration reform that begins with funding for the Naturalization Agency so that we don't have long lines, inordinate lines. I think that there are many improvements that can be made, and certainly to have a tone established. The president of this country establishes a tone for the nation, and to attack people on creed, on race, on gender, on ethnicity is just tremendously saddening, and it doesn't reflect who we are as a people. And so I think that if you embrace this presidency, if you embrace the president and you mimic his activities, you need to know that I think you have to part from some of the standards that he's embraced and the actions that he's carried forth. With that, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. All right, now we're going to move to our closing statements, and Liz, you're first.
Thank you very much. And I would just like to add to what the congressman said. You know, Congressman, I think that it's very unfortunate that you would sit on there and talk to people who have lost loved ones through that fentanyl and heroin overdoses coming through our southern border. Over 180,000 pounds were confiscated through there. And you would sit there and say that, oh, no, that's not true. It's coming through the ports. I don't really feel that that's a very empathetic or kind thing to say. So I would rebuke you on that. I've done my research on it. I know the gangs are coming from there, and we know that upwards of millions of people are sex trafficked through our borders. So in closing statements, what I would say is I'm glad to be running. I will bring a fresh voice. I am certainly somebody that is able to stand up and fight for our district, to bring a strong economy back to our district, to stand up for the Constitution, for every single business, for every single person here, for those who are suffering from domestic violence. Many people may know my story in standing up with someone who was horribly attacked, and I was assaulted as well. I want to stand up and make sure that that national bail reform does not pass. And I hope that you'll remember me on November 3rd and vote to put the joy back in New York.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Ann, and thank you again to the League for the opportunity, and thank you to Liz Joy for the opportunity to exchange ideas. Look, let me just correct. I did not say we shouldn't do anything about border control. I'm saying we should put our greatest amount of resources into the force that is known to be the biggest culprit here and the biggest concern. I stand by my record in both the House and in the State Assembly, where I've used my skills as an engineer to respond to the more technical phases of public policy. As an engineer, I think it comes in handy now to speak to an innovation economy, to make certain that we are ready and able to go forth to lead the nation and lead the world in responding to climate. And certainly, I hope we can get our HEROES Act passed so we can fund local employees through the municipal governments, making certain we have firefighters, police to the tune that is required. I'm not for defunding our police departments, our fire departments. I'm for providing those funds. And I thank you again for the opportunity this evening.
Thank you both for participating, Elizabeth Joy and Paul Tonko. Remember, everyone, to vote. General election is November 3rd. Early voting is very soon, October 24th through November 1st. You can look up your early voting and election day sites at voterlookup.elections.newyork.gov. You may also vote by absentee ballot, checking temporary illness in the state of New York. You must request an absentee ballot by October 27th. Don't wait till then in order to vote by absentee. When you receive your absentee ballot, remember to sign the envelope and mail to the Board of Elections according to instructions. You can request a ballot online at absenteeballot.election.newyork.gov. Again, thank you, candidates, for attending tonight and participating in government.
Thank you to the League. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.